with the agenda. We have our next speaker, Martin Renters. He was involved with the development of DFUG clinical trial data management software for 19 years as a software developer, chief technology officer, and director of software development. And Martin is now the owner of teckelworks. He will walk us through some updates to DFtoolkit. So thank you so much in advance, Martin.
Hello, and welcome to my DFtoolkit 3 presentation, updated for DFdiscover. So DFtoolkit was first presented at DFUG 2017, and it was developed as part of a PHRI consulting contract. I went around to the different study teams and I said, where does it hurt and how can I reduce your pain? And the outcome of that is a set of study-independent tools that work with any DataFacts or DFdiscover study. The idea is to make the information in the study more accessible and displayed as attractively as possible. The other goal is to reduce manual labor. So computers are really good at doing tedious and repetitive tasks, and they like doing that, and people aren't very good at doing that. So let's let the computers do those things that they're good at, and people do those things that they're good at. A couple of tools that are included in the toolkit is an Annotating CRF generator, a tool for generating closeout PDFs. This can also be used for adjudication purposes, for sending to adjudicators. A tool for generating QC reports in Excel format. A program for tracking electronic signatures on records, and the main feature of this tool is that it can deal with fields that the site isn't responsible for. So these would be things like Medra coding fields or SDV fields and those things. So it will go through and see what's changed. Is the site responsible for it? Therefore, the electronic signature is invalidated and needs to be re-signed. Otherwise, it isn't. 2 new reports, a recruitment and a data quality report, and both of those reports can also generate site report cards, which you can send off to the sites to show them how they're doing. So what's new? There's been very major updates under the hood to support the new DFdiscover features. So that includes eCRF support, high definition images, multilingual labels. So with the eCRF come the labels in Asian characters that we have to be able to generate. So it can do that. User-defined QC types and multiple QCs per field, and user properties. We use that for field property level definition and also for domain definition, which we'll see later on. There's also been performance increases to make things run faster. The first tool we'll talk about is the Annotate CRF tool. And this generates annotated CRFs in PDF format. It's sized for legal size paper. And the genesis for this tool was seeing that normally annotated CRFs are just letter size pieces of paper, and they have the CRF image on it, and then the field names written on top of that. And the problem with that is when the field labels get written on it, it sometimes obscures the field information on the CRF itself, so it becomes difficult to read. So this tool generates CRFs that have a left side that shows you the CRF or eCRF image, and the right sides which shows you the most important field properties. They're fully bookmarked and hyperlinked, which makes navigating them very easy. And as an extra bonus, you get a field cross-reference section at the end of the document that shows you where your fields are used within your study. So if you want to know where your systolic blood pressure variable is used, you can go and look up the SBP variable name, and you can see what plates and what field numbers it's used in. So here's an example of what a page would look like from the annotated CRF generator. On the left side, you see the CRF image. You'll notice that it's faded out, and the purpose of that is to allow the field boxes and the field numbers to stand out more so they're easy to read. On the right side, you see the major field properties. If you're using eCRF, it looks very similar to what you would expect to see in a DF Explorer or DF Setup. So let's take a look at the major field properties. So we have the field number, the variable name, the module it's in, the alias, the type, the length in characters, a format if applicable, the description of the field, the legal range, and the coding if applicable. Annotate CRF also supports an idea called field properties, or field priorities rather. So the idea here is that some fields are more critical than others. So it might be more important for you to know what the patient's blood pressure was than whether they took their vitamins in the morning. You can use these field priorities to also get the sites to focus on cleaning the most critical fields. And this came up in a study that I was working with where they had closeout that was happening. They had a lot of QCs that they deal with, and they wanted the sites to work on cleaning up the most critical fields that were going to be used in the analysis. So a field priority is a number between 1 and 5, 1 being the most important and 5 being the least important. You can define these either by a file or using the new user property, the field user property. The Annotate CRF will color code the fields by priority in red, orange, yellow, green, and blue colors. And these field priorities can also be read by the QC to Excel program when it generates Excel files for the QCs. So here's how you would do it with a file. You create a text file that has pipe delimited, plate, field, and priority fields. And if you're using the user properties, you create a property called priority, and then you, at the field level, define the property value. You can also do it, obviously, at the styles. When you then take these field priorities and combine it with the Annotate CRF program, it will then color the fields on the page so you can see they're red, orange, yellow, green, and blue. The Annotate CRF also generates a field cross-reference. So it lists all the field names in alphabetical order. Each entry has a description, the plate it's on, the field number, and hyperlinks that take you back to the field, or to the page rather, where it is used. So here's an example of what that looks like. This is my very small demo study, so we can focus in on a field called stress, and you can see that it's used twice in my study, once on plate 1 and once on plate 101. And if I click on either one of these, it will take me to the page where I can see where it's used. QC to Excel is a program that generates Excel spreadsheets that have QC information. So this can be one spreadsheet that has all your QCs in them, or one spreadsheet per site that has their QC information in it. There are live charts that update automatically as the Excel filters are used. So if you're interested in seeing, well, what are the QCs that are on plate 1, then once you filter for plate 1, the charts will update as well. It supports the field priority coding that we just saw, and it can also generate a mail merge file that you can use with an Outlook macro to automate the sending of QC reports. So this can reduce a great deal of time if you have hundreds of sites that you need to send these out to. So here's what it looks like when you don't have the field priority set. And if you have the field priority set, then it color codes them. So you'll see that there's some red fields that we're interested in getting the site to deal with, and some orange and yellow ones as well, and some blue ones. A recruitment report is one of the new reports, and it provides detailed information about how a site's recruitment is going. So it calculates a number of metrics. So how well did they do in the last period, a period being either 30-day or 90-day point in time. So how well did they do in their last period? What was their best period performance? What was the first period? So the first, when they started recruiting, how many days since their last patient was recruited? How many days have they been recruiting? Their mean recruitment rates and so forth. It also gives you a breakdown of recruitment by month. So you can see for each site how many patients did they recruit in July 2021. It's color-coded to quickly identify issues so you can focus in on those sites that need help. So here's an example of what it looks like. It has the country that the site is in, the site number, the site name, and the investigator, and I had to make up a bunch of data, of course, for producing this report, so I went through my iTunes library, and Dr. Keith Richards is at the Hamilton Rehab Hospital, and similar artists from my iTunes library show up at other hospitals. So let's zoom in on this a little bit further. So here's some example of the types of columns that you'll see. So days since activation, how long has the site been recruiting? How many days did it take to get their first patient? How many days has it been since their last patient? How many days since their best recruitment rate? What was their best recruitment rate? How many patients per month over a 90-day period in this example? What was their last recruitment rate over 90 days on a monthly basis? So they got 2 patients per month over a 90-day period on average. What was their first recruitment rate? What's their mean recruitment rate since activation, and their mean recruitment rate since their first patient, how many patients they have. So you can see that there's one site down here that has a lot of red, and they haven't recruited a single patient. So this might be a site that would pop out at you that would cause you to go and phone them and find out what's going on. Another site here has got lots of green in it, so we're not too worried about them. This one here with the yellows, well, maybe we need to keep a bit of an eye on them as well. The other part of the report shows you how well they did for each month. So in this particular case, in June 2021, this site recruited 6 patients. It gives you sort of a heartbeat on how they're doing, the left side being the most recent and corresponding the most recent month. The recruitment report can also generate report cards that you can send off to the sites. And sites are sometimes competitive with each other and they want to be the best. So this gives them an idea of how well they're doing and how well they're doing again compared to other sites. It works by having an Excel file that the study team creates that has a set of rules and conditions in it, and that define the messages and substitutions that get put out in the report card. Each site gets a PDF file, and then you can also use this mail merge type idea to send those out if you wish. So here's an example of what one of these Excel files that controls the report card generation looks like. So in this particular case, we're going to put out our study logo. There's the path name to the study logo. We then have 3 lines of title information. So it's going to say recruitment report and what the date is today, the site number, site name, and the country that it's in, the PI name. Then we have a section which is going to tell us what the recruitment data is. So globally, how many participants we have, how many sites we have, and globally how many countries are involved. And we have a chart of that. Another section that tells us how we're doing within our country. So how many participants in our country and how many sites in our country, and then a country recruitment chart. And then there's a section that's called Site Fact and Figures, and it gives you a set of messages that you can put out. So these are conditional. There's an if statement here. So you can say if the patient count is equal to 0, then you're going to get this message which says your site was activated on this date, but has not recruited any participants in the X number of days since then. If we have patients, so our count is greater than 0, then we're going to get this message. It says you're activated on this date and have randomized so many patients in total. You randomized your first patient on this date, your last was on this date, your best recruitment over an N-day period was this, and so forth. We can also combine these conditions, and we can say, well, if we have patients and we've recruited somebody in the last period, then we'll get this message put out. If we have patients recruited but we didn't do anything in the last period, then we'll get this message put out. So when we put this all together, this is the report card that you end up getting. So here's our logo, our 3 lines of title information. There's our section for global, our section for Canada, our charts for both of those that are our sites, facts, and figures with the information replaced. So we have the date where this particular site was activated and how many patients they've enrolled. And here's an example of another site in a different country. So Denmark has a much smaller slice of the pie than Canada does, and they only have 2 sites, and this particular site has this much of the Denmark pi. So once we have our sites recruiting, we also want to know, well, how are they doing with their data quality? So there's another report that helps with that. It's a color-coded Excel report, and it shows you how they're doing on their data quality. It calculates final records and complete records. So the idea here is that a final record is one that's simply marked as final. But if you have a visit and you're expecting 5 records and the site has sent you 1, and that record has been stored as final state, then it has 100% final status, because 1 over 1 is 100%. But we were expecting 5 records and we only got 1. So really we're only 20% complete. So this gives you an idea of how your sites are doing in that way. The other thing it does is it highlights consecutive missed visits. And this could be used to signal subjects that might be lost to follow-up. In this case, you might want to phone that site and see what happened to that patient. We can also generate site report cards using a similar rules file as in the recruitment report. This is what the report looks like. And again, we'll zoom in a little bit and take a look at the fields of interest. So the number of visits that the site has completed, the number of reports completed. So the difference between those is reports are really visit numbers, but the reports would be things that would be like a hospitalization report or a stroke report or something like that, whereas visits completed would be more schedule type things. The blocks of consecutive overdue visits, so this particular site has 1 block where there's consecutive overdue visits. So this would be somebody we'd want to contact and find out what's going on with that particular patient. The actual number of data records we've received, and how many of those are in final state, the percentage of that, the expected number of records, so this is the number of records that QC update, the visit map thinks that we should have, and then how many of those are complete. So the number of final data records divided by the expected number of records. How many QCs are outstanding at this site? How many records are affected by those outstanding QCs? The number of outstanding QCs per patient, and the number of QCs that are older than 60 days. Outstanding QCs greater than 60 days old. The report cards look similar. There's 2 variations of them. One of them has numeric grades, and the other one has letter grades. So some of the studies teams like the letter grades and some don't. Apparently some of the doctors don't like getting D's and F's on their report cards. The Closeout Generator is quite commonly used, and it generates closeout PDFs. As I said before, it can also be used for other purposes, such as adjudication forms that you would send to an adjudicator. The output is 1 PDF per patient. It's organized by a folder, by site. They are fully bookmarked and hyperlinked, so they're easy to navigate. They can include missing or previously called lost records or deleted records as well, if you want to see what happened to those. You can prefer specific backgrounds. So if you have language backgrounds, let's say you have sites in France and you want to use a French background for them, then you can tell the Closeout PDF generator to use French backgrounds in preference. So it will try those first. It will generate letter or A4 sized output pages, and it has optimized generation to speed things up quite quickly. So in most cases, it will take a few seconds to generate one of these closeout PDFs. They're heavily bookmarked and have lots of hyperlinks. So here's an example of what the navigation pane would look like. So we have the patient number, we have by visit, and we have by domain. So the domains would be plates that belong together. So these could be lab values, or they could be events or follow-up. So it's essentially a grouping by like plates. The visit numbers are the same as what you're normally used to. There's also section navigation. So for each record, we'll have the CRF view. We'll have data value listing. We may have attachments if we've chosen to include those. We may have audit trail and field level audit information as well. So we can use these to quickly go to the section for that particular record. You'll notice that there's lots of blue things here. Each of these is a hyperlink as well. So if I click on this field here, it will take me to the data listing to show me what information it has on this field. And this is useful when you have fields that are larger than the amount of boxes. So sometimes you have a data value that won't fit in the number of boxes that are on the page, or you have a text box that has a lot of text in it, but you don't have enough space on the CRF to display all of that text. So in that case, it will do the best it can. It will put it in a pink color and then show you in the data listing the actual complete value. So the various sections, you have an CRF or eCRF page view. This is what we just saw. If you include attachments, you can include both primary and secondaries, images and PDF attachments. There's a data field listing with values. Optionally, a chronological audit by data record, so you can basically answer what's the history of all the changes to this record. And there's also an optional audit by field. So what's the history of changes to this field? So if you don't want to go through the chronological list to find all the places where age has changed, then you can go to the audit by field section. So here's what they look like. The CRF view shows you the CRF or eCRF with the data fields filled in. Each data field links to the data field listing. So each of these blue will take you to the data field listing. If you have a field that has a missing value, it's going to get drawn in orange. If you have a field that has a value greater than what will fit in the boxes allocated, then it will be displayed in pink. And if you're using hidden fields and you redact them on the output file, then it will draw those in black. So they're hidden from the site or whoever it is you're sending this PDF to. Attachments, you can include primary only or both primary and secondary. Attachments can be limited to only certain plates if you want to limit it to that. And it supports PDF, PNG, and JPEG attachment file formats. So you might ask, well, what about DICOM images? DICOM images often have many frames in them, and they're more movie-like than they are a single image. So it's very difficult to put those out on a piece of paper, so they will be skipped. The data listing has the field number, the description, and then the value for the field. You'll notice that these are also all in blue. So when I click on that, and if I have my field audit listing enabled, then it will take me to the field audit listing where I can find out what happened to that field. The chronological audit shows me by date and time and user who made the change and what they did. It's very similar to what you would get out of AT mods. You can disable it if you want. It generates lots of pages, particularly if you have a lot of QCs and reasons changing, or if you have a batch edit check that's constantly changing values. The audit by field will display the same information but sorted now by field. So we can go to the age field and we can see that the age field had 3 transactions done to it. We had an initial value of 45, and then a short time later, the 45 was changed to a missing value. There was a reason put on it that we weren't sure of the patient's age, and then we changed the missing value to 46 and updated the reason text as well. So this allows you to focus in and see what happened at the field level. Additional features, you can limit the output to specific sites, patients, visits, or plates, or even levels. You can group plates by domain for the secondary bookmarks, which you saw earlier on, and you have the ability to use a shadow pages directory. Now this is useful when you have attachments that may have information that needs to be redacted for some purpose. So what you can do then is you can create a new pages directory, copy those attachments into the new pages directory, go redact them, and then tell the Closeout PDF generator to look in the shadow pages first. If it finds it there, it'll use it. If it doesn't find it there, then it'll look in the regular pages directory and use that. You can generate PDFs in parallel for greater speed. So most servers will have multi-core machines or multi-core processors in them these days. Some of them have 32 cores on them. So in this case, you can run the Closeout PDF generator on multiple cores at the same time, greatly speeding up the generation. So when you've got thousands of patients that you have to generate these for, that can make a significant difference in the amount of time it takes. Having said that, most of the PDFs can be generated in a few seconds. The longest one I think I saw was took 10 or 20 minutes, but it was also 14,000 pages long. It can generate linearized or fast web view PDFs, and this is what the FDA requests that you send them. DataFac's Toolkit availability continues to be open source, so you can compile and build it yourself. Teckelworks, that's me, will be making an easy to install kit available as a value-added option once all the tools are complete. So there's still development happening and testing happening. If you see something here that's caught your interest, or you'd like to see some enhancements made, I'm available on a consulting basis to implement those features. And I'd like to acknowledge that PHRI has funded most of the development of this toolkit over the years. So they've poured an enormous amount of money into developing this and providing it to the community. Everest Clinical Research has also provided funding for developing these toolkits and ideas as well. So I'd like to thank both of those groups for their support over the years. Thanks for listening, and if you have any questions, we'll open up for questions now.
Thank you, Martin. Yay, definitely. You raised a lot of interest in the chat. Not sure if you have been seeing it.
Yeah, I've been following along.
Great.
I have a.
Sorry, someone was having a question?
Yeah, this is Robert Yon. My question is that right now, one of the big things about dealing with government is that contracts always have to be released to buy just about anything. And so when things are bundled or bundled as options within the contracts that are released, that saves the people a lot of effort in doing what we need to do to get software or whatever. So in this particular case, a good example would be if this teckelworks package was tacked onto our contract that we use to buy your software for DFDet software, then when we exercise that particular option, we could be updating and the payment method would be there already. But because there's no agreement between your organizations, or at least there's none blatantly visible except for the agreement in this presentation, that presents a problem. And I was just wondering, is there any plans on doing that you can offer as additions to existing or future contracts?
So I can take this. We do understand the issue with the VA and NIH and other groups that are kind of government based. And I think that there could be a specific solution for your group, Robert, in terms of adding this in or doing something else. We have kind of what we call our mega enterprise license with the VA, and there's some language in there that would perhaps support some sort of bundling, just as you say, where we'd have to talk with Martin and see how he feels about this and different things. So there's some complexities there, but for your specific example, I think there might be some options there on our side. I can't speak to Martin or others, PHRI, Everest, but certainly there might be some options there.
Yeah, I'm certainly willing to discuss it. Anything that's easier for people. It's why make life difficult when it doesn't have to be difficult, right?
Right, and historically, even back to the Wayne days with CDSI, we've always been pretty flexible about how to get things into people's hands. So I think the great thing with the user group community is it really is a community. So we can all work together to make it better for everyone.
Thank you.
So, Martin, to follow with the agenda, we should move with the next speaker. But can I encourage you, because there has been so many questions regarding getting access, availability, hosting within, and also the hosting to run these reports. So, would you mind to contact by message?
Yeah, I can respond to the questions in the chat. Sure.
Thank you so much, Martin.
And if anybody wants to contact me directly, my email is on the beginning of the presentation as well. So
you can write down your email. If
yeah,
you
I can do that too.
Yep. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.